Please come now, I think I'm falling, holding on to what I think is safe. Seems I found
Tonight, the most
a
powerful
way
hurricane to hit
nowhere,
Haiti in more than
and
50
I'm
years
trying
is
to
causing chaos and
escape.
panic.
This is Matthew! Pray for us! We are right!
Welcome, everybody. If you live in Florida, this storm is pretty significant in the eyes of many, but not to minimize some of the effects that this storm can and will have. It's also something that's going to become a norm. And I want to talk to you guys about, since this hurricane is coming and your attention has been drawn by this hurricane, talk about some real world scenarios that we must all keep mindful of. So I'm going to discuss those things. Now, who knows where this conversation is going to go tonight, because I didn't really plan to come on in the first place. But I do want to say welcome to everybody. Those in some of you guys in Wellborn and Daytona Beach and Jacksonville, you're probably beginning to feel the winds. And just to give you the nature of this hurricane, it's moving up the East Coast, and it's not going to. If colder water were to the north of this hurricane, it would likely slow down its wind speeds. But what we have is a hurricane with the association of wind. Is right now is tremendous. The wind speed right now, this is from current data, not from your weather channels, is a 136.2 miles an hour. It's still the storm itself. Some of those differential pressures are at 928 millibars. Movement is at 13.6 miles an hour. That's real-time data. So, because I'm watching this, don't get happy because I'm getting the real-time data or anything else. It's only because the storm does pose a significant threat because of the wind speeds. In fact, of all the natural disasters we could ever have, any disaster associated with wind speeds is certainly going to be devastating. Also, I'd like to say that Nebraska, that's where Angela is. They're due to have some storms in the Iowa, South Dakota region, Kansas, those places. And a small piece of Colorado could potentially see that. I am going to be looking into another phenomenon while everybody's attention is on these storms. I'll likely be on for a long time this evening, going into the twilight hours because of another development. One of the key reasons I'll do this, and thank God I have time to do it, is that, listen, guys, should something happen not associated with the weather, should something happen, it'd be heartbreaking to me for any of you guys to get so nervous that you can no longer function. Okay? We don't want that to happen. And so if anything did happen, I'm not going to minimize what's happening, but certainly put it into context. At that point, if something does take place, it really doesn't matter how much information I give. It will be accurate information. It will not be anything that somebody would speculate on or assume or anything like that. It'd be quite accurate. And the reason for that is so that you guys can also inform others of those real world scenarios. We're reaching a time, most of the shows like Council of Time and all these other broadcasts, we're going to reach a time where whoever's speaking in those broadcasts, we're going to have to do a lot of explaining to the people. And believe me, we're going to reach some very strange times. Right now, you're being acclimated to these things that go on in the world, and it is global. It is global. Fear is certainly something that will destroy the mind, and it's unnecessary, really. No matter how bad it looks, fear is unnecessary. Many people are going to say, well, this storm was caused from HAARP. But no, it's not, because HAARP is non-functional at the moment. at a small axe. It's amazing. Every time somebody says something is HARP, all they have to do is, well, it's kind of difficult now, but HARP is not working too well, which is why they shifted many things to Germany. In fact, I know that certain people don't know the true mission of HARP and what they're actually doing. They blame things on HARP. They do. And it may sound convincing, but you can make anything sound convincing. But what I'm telling you is this. Yes, they have weather catalysts, I'll call them, to increase storms and do things of that nature. They do. Weather wars are real. That began in World War II, when they began to create clouds as a curtain to hide aircraft and ships. That's when the chemtrails really began. In World War II, it was a defense strategy. Then it flipped over to a computer program, so they could see a three-dimensional model a long time ago of everything that was on the face of the earth. Reflective particles put into the atmosphere would actually bounce IR back, and they could see objects moving. That's where it came from. HARP was a part of that too. It was all part of weaponry and monitoring. All these things have an origin. Many people think they're seeing UFOs in the skies, and they're not. There are many things out there like that people try to explain, but it's better to wait for the truth. Because now we enter into a time where speculation is going to become absolutely 100% dangerous. Even I had to learn the lesson to not give out things prematurely. Do you not know that back in 2011, these phenomena on the east coast of weather and the west coast were known by a team I was associated with? So what it really means is that the East Coast is going to continue to be inundated with water until the point where we're going to lose the coastal regions. It's happening slowly but surely. 2011, I began to talk to people about it. Here's the sad part. There's a mentality, a mental state that we have which says this. If a multitude of people believe it, it must be true. That's wrong. A multitude of people do not believe in the Bible. They get this mob mentality of belief, this type of hysteria on facts. Because a multitude of people, or majority of people, believe in certain facts, they count that as being real. See, here's the thing. Just like the storm, right? Let's take this storm, for example. They give a warning. They tell people to evacuate. You and I know some people are not going to evacuate. They're going to ride the storm out. Now, if the storm shifts, all those people who didn't move, they're going to say, see, I was right. And the people who evacuated, some of them will say, well, they can't ever get anything right. And then, when they give no warning, storms are going to change positions and take lives. So here's what I'm saying. Nations in distress with perplexity. You know what that means? Their ability to forecast is coming to an end. If nations are distressed with confusion or perplexity, no, they can't solve it, then their forecast models are going to cease to work. That's a conflagration of problems that will begin to take place on the face of the earth. That is the unthinkable actually taking place. That's where people lose it all. Again and again and again. That's having a hurricane and it passes only to be followed by some other disaster, like a land shift, a city-sized sinkhole. You will see a city-sized sinkhole. You're going to see it. All the degradation that's happening on the East Coast is affecting fuel lines and everything else. States will run out of fuel. Something will happen to the fuel lines on the East Coast, folks. It's happening already. There's degradation of gas lines, coal fires under the East Coast too. All these things are happening, and people are not taking notice, but they're building. There will come a point in time where they can't hide these things anymore, right? And then what? The problems will be, they're just going to mount one atop the other. There'll be no amount of money to fix the issue. Everybody's going to be perplexed or confused as to how to approach the problem. On top of that, natural disasters and the frequency of them will hit at very inconvenient times. And then the world will begin to lose control. Because they'll say, why are all these things happening? Why are all these things happening? What's happening here? How do we fix this? We can't fix this. Every day something is going to take place. You guys remember that time in the 80s where every single day something of crime was taking place? And they begin to ask, saying, how can we fix this? How can we fix this? The weather's going to do the same thing. Winter is coming. Forecast models for the winter are absolutely wrong. You guys have heard me echo time after time, it's too much moisture trapped in the atmosphere. Right? When that stuff, when all those water molecules begin to condense, you're looking at high winds in the winter nobody has ever seen. I wonder what they're going to name. Here's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering this myself. What do you call a winter storm that has hurricane force winds? That looks like a hurricane, but it's a winter storm at very low altitude. What are they going to name that? A winter cane? I don't know what they're going to name it. But it's going to happen with the vortices that will take place. What do you call that? They can't call that just a strong low pressure system either. So what do you call that? There will be some new weather phenomena happening, right? So, and listen, you're going to see an example. Because if you don't think those straight line winds of about 150 miles an hour are coming, I don't know what to tell you. But you might want to track certain events of this hurricane to get an idea of what 130, 120, 130 mile an hour winds can do. You see, a Cat 4 carries winds up to 140 miles. There's no structure that can really withstand a Cat 4. It's going to have damage either way. So what happens when a massive low and a massive high get together, causing isobars all over the map, and then you have straight line winds like nobody ever saw before? There will be low pressure systems the size of the United States. Can you imagine a low pressure system the size of the U.S. and a high pressure system the size of the U.S., and in between is the U.S.? Then you have straight line winds. And what will people do? We have all this knowledge, but we're not looking at the true potential, certainly of what the Lord said. That Jesus said this. The seas and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, for looking after those things which are coming upon the earth. I want to explain something to you. When the powers of heavens are shaken, that was the last statement, Luke 21:26. When you look at this in context, all of the above was happening because the powers of heaven are shaken. Because it says, signs in the sun, moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the seas and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and looking after those things which are coming upon the earth. For, and this is the reason for all of it, for, or because the powers of heaven shall be shaken. When the powers of heaven are shaken, the moon will change. The sun will begin to alter. Even right now, the earth is tilting more and more every single day. Something is happening to the sun. Let me ask you a question. We hear all these things about the sun, but who's checking to see how far the earth is away from the sun, or how close the earth is to the sun? Has anybody ever told you, hey, the distance between the earth and the sun is diminishing or it's increasing? Have they ever talked about that? You hear about everything else, but when it comes to distance, they're not telling you anything. What about the moon? Many people are beginning to notice, because they have taken track over the course of 10 years, and they have these eye charts. And what an eye chart is with every phase of the moon, they have a size. They'll just simply, from a fixed point on Earth, take the size of the moon and make sure it fits. And they'll do this over 10 years so that with the wobble, they can take account of certain things, right? The sizes don't fit anymore. It's either too small or too big. What does that indicate? That indicates that the moon's orbit is changed. And when the moon's orbit is changed, the water will be affected on Earth. So will the weather patterns, so will the seasons. When was the last time you heard about that? There's so many things taking place, and they're escalating, but they're not speaking about them. We're coming into a belt for sure. This other system, I say it is, there's a lot of trash with it. We're going to enter into it. Fireball sightings will likely increase at an alarming rate to the point where people will become scared every time they see a light in the sky. Those who know what is happening, they know it's no way out. Can you imagine if we had a meteor storm and cities were burnt, right? But to a minimal degree, and people say, I'm glad that's over. We lost a city, but I'm glad that's over. And then somebody says, well, I hate to tell you this, we have 2 more coming in 2 months. People would they would be terrified seeing the evidence that an entire city was lost. The entire sky at some point is going to be filled with ash. And then what? The entire sky. It'll be very cold on the surface, and if any direct sunlight hits anybody, they're going to be cooked right there where they stand. There's a degradation effect that can happen now that they've stuck aluminum fragments and everything else in the atmosphere. If ash is released, there will be a reaction. Many people don't even know that. They don't know the correlation between the ozone and volcanic eruptions because we have tampered with the natural processes of the atmosphere. That just happened. We're now talking about global warming. The Earth can balance itself. It can balance itself. Doesn't matter how many toxins are in the atmosphere, but when you take those elements that are deep within the Earth and you begin to spray them in the atmosphere, they should never have been there. Then you have chemical reactions. You have a destabilization of things, and this is what they've done. So then things are out of balance, right? Why? Because of the military-industrial complex. Not because of coal fires, not because of fires, period. Not because of your trash or cow farts. It's not because of those things. The composition of the atmosphere is very different than what it used to be. Very different. Are they telling you about the other massive system that's forming, even right now? There is a possibility of another hurricane. Possibility. See, the water's too warm in the southern regions of the Earth, which is where the jet stream dips down to. Is anybody discussing? See, I've looked at what you guys look at with the airflow maps and everything. You know what? They're inaccurate. They're not covering certain regions. That's called a digital fill-in. That's a trending airflow, which means it's not actual airflow. It's not real time. But they're filling in the gaps with fuzzy logic, kind of like a video game. But I didn't tell you another one's forming. No one told you what's happening well below Arizona. If you go in the South Pacific, something is forming down there too, which could likely just come up to the West Coast. I think something is going to form and go right across Mexico because we have very warm waters in the Gulf right now. It's going to pick up energy. Where you have warm water, these things pick up energy. And by the way, in the southern hemisphere, the waters are incredibly warm. Also, the rain event that the Mediterranean will begin to produce. These are just weather phenomena that are guaranteed to shake people up. But it's going to become so bad, people will begin that they're not going to want to live in coastal cities at all. They're not. Folks, I want to say be encouraged. You're worth everything to the Father because he gave everything for you. Okay, I want to leave you with that. I'm going to go get some updates on the storm. You guys that live in Florida and the folks in Nebraska and play in the middle of the country too. They're having some pretty. They have a potential of some pretty devastating storms that are forming there too. So, God bless you all. You may or may not hear from me later on air. I don't know. But I'll certainly come back to the chat room. God bless each and every one of you.